Hey, it's David Pingree out here at Fox Raceway today. We've got our 2020 KTM 350 SX, and haven't had a chance to ride this thing till today. I've always been a fan of this bike. I know that it's kind of a niche market for it, but if you are somebody who feels like that 450 is maybe just a little too much, 250 is not quite enough, this is kind of like a Three Little Bears situation, and this one's going to be just right for you. If you are trying to race at a very high level against 450s, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. There's no replacement for displacement, as they like to say. And you will notice there's a little bit less torque, so starts are going to be tougher and things like that, but that's a very small sliver of the pie. I think most people either race recreationally at a local fun level, or they just like to go riding, whether that's tracks or hills or whatever. And this is a really, really good bike, something to consider if you're one of those people. For 2020, a few changes to this thing. It got kind of all the updates that they got on the 250 and 450 and the valving of the fork and shock. Just updated, revised settings to give it a little bit better action and feel. They said they've had good results with that. Today, kind of our impression on the track was that it does feel a little bit more well-rounded. We didn't make a whole lot of changes. We're going to have a dialed-in video coming to you here soon. We get a little bit more time on this. We'll give you good starting points and settings, but I'll just be real honest with you. We didn't do a whole lot, and that means those guys have done their homework. And so those are kind of the suspension changes. There is some mapping changes they made just to adapt to another change they made, which is to the airbox over here. And it comes with a solid airbox that's just one full covered piece. So if you're racing in very dusty conditions, long off-road races, sand, mud, you can put that on and protect your air filter a little bit. If your conditions are somewhere in the normal range, you throw this vented one on. It's all got a bunch of perforated holes in it, and this thing breathes a lot better. It's something the race team's been doing for a while, and they've just found really kind of turbocharges this thing. And so they've made some mapping changes to kind of go along with that. And it's noticeable on a dyno and on the track. This thing, as I mentioned, a little bit less torque right out of the turn than a 450, but boy, as soon as you get this thing going, it pulls like crazy. And a neat thing about this power characteristic, the guys here at KTM were talking about how typically you'll have a bike that will rev up to maybe 12,000, 13,000 RPMs, and then it falls off. If you look at the dyno curve, it actually starts making less horsepower once it hits that certain point until it bounces off the limiter. This bike goes all the way to 14,000 RPMs, and it climbs all the way to the peak where it starts hitting the limiter. So something that was a little bit tough for me to get used to was I would come up to big jumps, something where I'm reaching for it, and I'm already pretty high in the RPM, so in my brain I'm kind of going, ooh, no, I need to shift a gear. But you've got to get comfortable knowing that this thing pulls longer than really any other bike. And so it's going to pull almost as long as a 450 pulls, if not a little farther, and certainly farther than a 250 and with more power. So it takes a little bit of getting used to is what I'm trying to say. There's a big step up here at Fox Raceway, and I was between second and third, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to get it in second, but it does. And you just got to trust that it's going to continue to build power up into those RPMs. And anyway, it's a neat bike. It takes a little bit of getting used to that way because it's its own machine, and it takes a certain style of riding. You can't be as aggressive as you would on a 250, but if you try to lug it around like you can a 450, it's not going to work well for you either. So there's sort of a mid-level aggression you've got to ride it with, and it's really fun once you figure it out. So again, those kind of few changes for this year meant to fine-tune it and really tweak it, and all of them are improvements. I feel like the horsepower is improved, especially mid to top, and I feel like the suspension is just all around more balanced and a little bit better action. I hate air forks, a long time been saying that, but I don't mind this WP air fork. I still don't like having to check the pressure. It's like another pain in the ass thing I got to do when I get to the track. I'm so excited when I get here, I just want to ride. I'm sure a lot of you guys are the same way, but you have to check it because it will change. And even throughout the day, if your temperature is fluctuating, probably check it again midday and just make sure it's where it needs to be, because as that pressure builds, even a half a pound, it's like going up a spring rate, and it's going to work a lot different, obviously. So anyway, great motorcycle. These guys have really always been good at the finishing touches, from the different maps to traction control to hydraulic clutch and Brembo brakes. Really high quality stuff, good ODI lock-on grips. So they've again made a great machine. Again, look for a dialed in video coming to you soon with some good starting points and setup tips. Thanks for watching.